Hi, this is BBC Business Live with Alice Baxter and Hesslehurst.
Yeah, still in crisis. Fierce street clashes and rioting in Athens as Greece's economy slides back towards recession.
Yeah, live from London. That's our top story on Friday, the 13th of November. A growing mood of despondency in Greece. The country's latest GDP figures are out in a few hours' time, and they're expected to show that its economy contracted 1% compared to the last 3 months, wiping out the growth of the previous 3 months. Also in the programme, the robots, they're coming. Watch out, because they may be taking your job. 50 million jobs. That's the warning of the Bank of England's chief economist as technology advances. And shares here in Europe, well, there you go, they're opening lower on Friday, taking their cue from Asia, where a commodity sell-off dragged stocks down overnight. Investors continuing to mull the likelihood of a US rate hike next month.
Not going to take our job, Alice, and it is Friday, so we're joined, of course, by our tech guru, Rory Cellan-Jones, who's going to be giving us his take on all the big tech stories of the week, and there are a lot of them, let me tell you. Hey, today we want to know, what do you reckon about robots taking over? Could a robot do your job? Let us know. Just use the hashtag BBC BizLive.
Yeah, very warm welcome to the programme. Thanks for being with us. Now we start with Greece and growing fears that the country is slipping back into recession. Some are blaming the harsh austerity imposed by the EU and the IMF. Others, a failure by Athens to stick to its reforms. Well, either way, the suffering of the Greek people is set to continue. Let's just take a look at the numbers involved here so you get a sense of the scale. Greece returned to economic growth last year after a 6-year slump, but it looks like that recovery is over. GDP, gross domestic product figures for the 3 months to September, they're out in just a few hours from now, and they're expected to show that Greece's economy contracted by around 1% compared to the last 3 months, wiping out the growth that we saw in the previous quarter. And it's a trend that could be set to continue. Both the European Commission and the OECD warn that Greek GDP will end the year down 1.4%, with a similar fall coming again next year. Now, this is the real worry point. A quarter of the Greek workforce, they are still unemployed, without jobs, over twice the EU average, and almost half of those under 25 are without a job still. Well, on Thursday, Greece was paralysed by yet another general strike over new austerity measures, with over 20,000 protesters taking to the streets in central Athens. Well, trade union leaders and many Greeks, they've turned on Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras and his Syriza party, accusing them of caving into lenders.
Good on you, Alice. Well, let's stay with this, our economics correspondent, and a familiar face to all of us. Andrew Walker joins. Andrew, great to have you with. Hey, Andrew, before we start, we've got some comments from some of the protesters yesterday in Athens. Let's just have a listen to what they had to say about austerity.
I believe strikes can backfire on workers, but there are some moments when people need to react. This is the time when people need to react. Enough already with the taxes, enough with the double talk. They need to let us breathe.
It's an expression of worry about the uncertainty and insecurity that prevails in our country and for the living standards of our society and people.
Enough with cuts to our pensions and wages. The Greek people must rise up and take to the streets, because the situation is only going to get worse.
These measures that the government wants to pass are measures that will bury us.
There you go. Now, Andrew, us outsiders watching and people around the world watching this programme, watching that go, hang on, you know, they had a referendum in Greece, and they gave the thumbs up for the Syriza party to stay in the EU, to accept the bailout, which meant
and more reforms.
This money doesn't come for free, and now they're protesting again.
Well, there's no question, I think, that the short-term impact of austerity does aggravate an economic downturn. There's a big debate to be had about whether you are laying the foundations or not for stronger growth in the future. But and also do bear in mind that although there was indeed support for Syriza in the election, they did get a mandate to negotiate a programme with the EU and then to implement it. There was an awful lot of people voting against it, and simply because the rest of the country said take the medicine doesn't mean we can expect the others to remain quiet.
No, very true. Very, very good point. Once again, though, we've got Greece's European peers, the other countries in the Eurozone, who are quite vocally sort of, saying to Athens, come on, you've got to hurry up, you've got to hurry up, we've had enough of this. Because one of the sticking points at the moment is it seems like the government wants to allow people, if they don't pay their mortgages, they're not going to repossess their homes. Basically, the government wants to write off people's mortgages. Europe's not going to take that.
The European Union does indeed, and the IMF wants to see tougher rules that will enable banks to foreclose, to repossess homes when borrowers are in default for a long enough period. That's for sure. And it is politically very sensitive. There's no question about it. It is a general and very sad fact of life in most economies that if you do get into serious enough arrears on a home loan, you end up losing it. But yeah, this is one of the main big outstanding issues. Though bear in mind, I think the view at in the rest of the Eurogroup is that Greece has made a lot of progress. They've had several payments of money, and what we're looking at now is the last stages before the Eurogroup will authorise another payment to Greece, and in particular the release of up to €10 billion worth of money to recapitalise the banks.
Well, let's talk about that, Andrew, because just currently there's this €2 billion package that's on hold, isn't there, while they talk about the house remortgages and all the rest of it. The recapitalisation of the banks, in fact, the restructuring of the banking system, that's something that the Troika are saying is vital, aren't they? We're still not seeing the sort of overhaul of the financial systems in Greece that the Western creditors think it needs to happen. They
do want to see some reforms of the way in which the banks are run, governance as it's called, to insulate them rather more from any kind of political influence. But I think the really big question is simply getting the capital into the banks so that they have the sufficiently strong financial foundations to provide the credit that the private sector needs to expand. And bear in mind, this deterioration we've seen in the economy that we're going to get almost certainly have confirmed in the figures we are going to get in an hour and a half's time.
Well, yeah,
that is very much underlying this further deterioration there has been in the banking system.
Because we saw this slight return to growth, didn't we, in the previous quarter?
Yeah, I mean, the previous quarter, the one view of what happened there was that it may have been a fair amount of spending driven by people getting money out of the bank before an anticipated bank closure. That bank closure did indeed happen, and that's done a lot of further damage to the economy.
OK, Andrew, unfortunately we've got to wrap it up. But we're getting a step closer to Greece having to or the lenders having to write off some of Greece's debt, right?
Or simply extend the repayment period into the indefinite future.
Andrew, great stuff, mate, as always. Andrew Walker, happy Friday, mate.
And you.
Yes, OK, let's just touch on some of the other stories making headlines all around the world. There's lots. We'll start with the German economic growth. It slowed slightly in the last 3 months, according to preliminary numbers. Europe's largest economy braved headwinds from China's economy and the Volkswagen pollution scandal. The German economy expanded by 0.3% in that July to September period on that quarterly basis, all according to the Federal Statistics Office there. That compared to growth. So they had actually growth of 0.4% in the previous quarter. That's why we're saying they slowed a little bit.
Yeah, well, let's stay in Germany, actually, because the car maker Volkswagen, it set a 30th November deadline for staff with knowledge about those diesel emission test cheating to come forward. Workers who get in touch with internal investigators by then will be exempt from dismissal, according to a letter from VW brand chief Herbert Diess. US regulators found VW put in software that turned on emissions controls when the car was being tested.
Talking of Volkswagen, it's time for the old tabby.
Yeah.
I'm sitting down today, so I got the tabby. You're doing all the work on the catwalk. So let's start with this because it just keeps going. You know,
it's the story that keeps on giving this VW emissions scandal.
And what do they set aside? About $7.5 billion. And we've said from day one, right, that since September the 18th that scandal broke, that's not going to be enough money. Here's what this is: a story about Brazil fines Volkswagen 13 million, which is a drop in the bucket, basically, compared to 13 million over emissions cheating. And they also pick up again, you know, Modi, of course, the Prime Minister, Indian Prime Minister, is in the country at the moment here.
Yeah.
But Belgium does more trade.
I know.
Diamonds.
It's day 2 of that 3-day visit, isn't it?
Okay, let's go straight over to Rajeshni in Singapore, and Rajeshni is going to talk to us about the markets. I think the markets in Asia are down in the doldrums, and we point one finger at the C word, commodities.
That's right. Asian shares took a big hit today from slumping commodity prices. The prices of key commodities, oil, copper, and gold all fell to multi-year lows overnight because there's a list of growing concerns. First, there's oversupply issues in the sector, which is looking even worse now because of slowing demand from China. And then there's the likelihood of the Fed raising interest rates in the U.S. in December, which is bad as well because it strengthens the U.S. dollar. Now, these factors combined have packed a pretty strong punch against the resources sector here. Shares are down the most in Hong Kong today, with the Hang Seng falling over 2%. Glencore shares there tumbled over 7%. And then there's also the big Sydney-listed miners BHP and Rio Tinto that fell almost 2%. So not a good day for the commodity sector today.
No, indeed. Thanks, Rajeshni. Well, let's stay in Asia now because Japanese stocks, they slipped on Friday. Look at the Nikkei. They're snapping a 7-day winning streak as investors shunned risk and cashed in on recent gains after a sharp drop on Wall Street. It was also a similar picture right across the region where shares slumped after Rajeshni was just talking about it. Those commodity prices plunging to multi-year lows on worries that slower global growth may worsen a supply glut, while US Federal Reserve officials, they kept beating the drum for a rate hike next month. Meanwhile, here in Europe, well, shares following suit, opening lower. The FTSE 100 here in London currently down just over 0.5%. Really focused on what central bankers have been saying on both sides of the Atlantic, with Janet Yellen on Thursday continuing to not give too much away. Well, Neda Tawfik can tell us a little bit more now about what's making headlines in the business world across the pond.
After a weak performance by Macy's earlier in the week, we'll find out Friday how department store operator JCPenney Co. performed in the third quarter. It's expected to beat analyst estimates, helped in part by higher sales from the beauty brand Sephora, which is in half of its stores. And we'll get an overall look at U.S. retail sales in October. Analysts believe Americans kept spending on cars and other goods, making it a stronger month than September. No wonder then that data is expected to show that consumer sentiment is up in November. And finally, the Labor Department will release figures for October's Producer Price Index. It measures cost increases felt by retailers, which usually gets passed on to consumers. That'll give a sneak peek on inflation and whether or not it's headed in the direction of the Fed's 2% target.
Good on you, Neda. Let's stay with the markets. Richard Fletcher, business editor of The Times, joins us. Richard, always good to have you with us. Let's continue on because it is the driver at the moment, the commodities theme. Down, problem for London's main market, the FTSE, it's heavily exposed.
Absolutely. So the FTSE is down about 6% since the start of the year, which is a lot more than US markets, and that's very much because we are more exposed to miners than other markets, and we have seen commodity carnage, as one market commentator called it yesterday. So London is more exposed, and therefore, you know, a lot of these companies are literally just plays on the price of the raw materials they produce. So copper's at a 6-year low, oil is again touching 6.5-year lows. So not surprisingly, these companies are seeing their share prices just continually fall.
Hence the drag it's had on markets around the world recently. Richard, just want to ask you about some of the European data we're going to have out over the course of the day. GDP numbers for France, Germany, Italy, Greece, culminating in the Eurozone at a whole at 10 a.m. GMT. What are we expecting?
So we get 9 countries update between now and 10, and then we get the overall number, which is expected to be 0.4%. So far of the big ones, we've had France, which has returned to growth, so that was good news. But Germany was slightly disappointing there. Growth has stalled, which is what we expected, but nevertheless disappointing. I think the markets will be keeping one eye on these numbers, and obviously the Eurozone number as a whole. This comes ahead of Draghi next week, when we're expecting more easing from the European Central Bank.
Yeah,
Richard.
everyone's keenly watching whatever he's got to say, don't they? Yeah. Richard, many thanks. I think you're
Hang on
sticking
their
around.
words, don't we? You're going to come back and do the papers.
Yeah.
We'll talk to you very shortly.
Great stuff. Thanks, Richard.
Okay, still to come. We're joined by our tech guru, Rory Cellan-Jones, who's going to take us through all the big tech stories we've had over the week, like the Facebook one, the drones.
Exactly. Facebook laser drones that beam out the internet. Can you imagine?
Yeah, well, you're with Business Live from BBC News.
What makes your business go? Your answer should maximize your workflow. Your answer should minimize your downtime. Your answer should always make your business performance secure. What makes your business go? The answer is right in your hand. Give your business the edge. Samsung Galaxy S6 Edge Plus.
That was beautiful.
Who are you?
I'm the Wyndham Rewards Wizard. And it's time to create some memories together.
Is he on your side of the family?
I thought we were honeymooning in Reno. Was this magic?
Not. Your husband earned this.
So what do we do now?
It's your honeymoon. I'm sure you'll think of something magical.
15,000 points get you a free night at over 7,500 hotels. Sign up at WyndhamRewards.com today.
We live in a world of mobile technology, but it is not the device that is mobile. It is you.
Real Madrid have about 450 million fans. We're trying to give them all the feeling of being at the stadium. The Microsoft Cloud gives us the scalability to communicate exactly the content that people want to see. Will help people connect to their passion of living Real Madrid.
With so many problems facing us, how can we prepare for the future?
Energy demand is going to double in the first half of this century.
Are we going to have enough food to feed the world?
Every day, scientists go to work in the hope of discovering technology that will make our lives better.
With a square metre of this, you could generate enough power to cook my dinner.
That's right. The best way to prepare for the future is to talk to the people making it. Horizons. Coming soon on BBC World News.
You are watching. My
Take
glasses
care
got caught
Take care there with
You're
the
watching
glasses.
Business Live. Our top story: an economy choked by austerity, or one that's just failed to reform. Because I tell you what, there is no end to the misery for Greece. Those latest growth numbers coming out of Greece are expected to show that it is sliding back towards recession.
Yeah, we're expecting those at around 10 a.m. GMT. Now, it's been a busy week for tech stories as ever. Facebook announced that it was working on laser drones. I know you're excited about that, Aaron. That will be high-speed internet access to areas currently with poor internet access.
Yep,
well,
and
the US...
go on, no, you go for it. Keep
it's,
going.
well, it charged 4 men in one of the biggest hacking cases of all time.
It's called sharing, Alice. But anyway, Snapchat got marked down by one of its most high-profile investors, raising further questions about the soaring valuations of private tech companies.
And we can't not mention it, can we? China Singles Day. Chinese e-commerce giant Alibaba, that managed to sell a record $14.3 billion worth of goods in 24 hours.
Okay, he's here.
Well,
we've bigged him up enough. We've promoted him enough. Now let's see if he delivers some. Here we go. Rory.
Same day delivery with me, mate.
No.
Rory.
Let's start with Snapchat, because we often talk about the big valuations. Are they overvaluated, these tech companies? You're going to mention the word unicorn. Explain what's going on.
Well, the last couple of years, we've had this extraordinary phenomenon, particularly in Silicon Valley, where companies, instead of going straight to the public markets as quickly as possible, have managed to increase their valuations privately. And then you've got these extraordinary figures coming out. A unicorn is what we call them. A unicorn is a company that achieves $1 billion valuation without ever going to the market. And what we're now seeing is that a lot of these companies, people are beginning to ask, Are they really worth that? Snapchat in particular was worth $16 billion according to the market, according to the last round of investment back in May. Yeah. But one of the investors, Fidelity, has quietly cut its valuation. It's got a stake in the company. It's cut it by 25%. And we've seen other examples where companies actually do have to hit the market, do go for an IPO, and they then find they're floating at a value lower than had been expected before. One great example, Square, the financial services mobile payments product run by Jack Dorsey of Twitter. Its IPO much lower than valued. Another one, Dropbox. So I think a bit of air coming out of that Silicon Valley tech bubble right now.
Okay,
and of course, the number of unicorns that's just spiked exponentially, hasn't it, as well?
Yeah, they were supposed to be rare. There are now about 150 of them.
Yeah. I also want to ask you about Facebook's laser drones versus Google's net beaming balloons. I mean, for those who haven't heard about it, I just love the name of the project at Google. Isn't it Project Loon?
The Google one is called Project Loon, these great big balloons. But what we've heard about this week is Facebook's plan to beam the internet via drones and lasers to remote parts of the world. These two companies, these two extraordinary giants, they're really flexing their muscles. They both want to show that they're good people, they're good citizens, they're going to give the internet to places that don't have it, but they want to be first with it, and they're trying out extraordinary technology. So the Facebook technology involves building this single-wing unmanned aerial vehicle. It's basically a giant wing. Yeah. It's going to be up there for 3 months at a time, just floating around, solar-powered. Yeah. They're going to fire a laser at it with the internet from the ground, from a place which has got good internet. And they were telling me the other day that they've got to hit an area about the size of a US dime. Yeah, you know, a tiny coin.
Yeah. Like just a big button or
so there's some extraordinary technology here. Wow. And meanwhile, Google has got its plan to do the same thing, but using high-altitude balloons. So the two squaring off. It just kind of shows, I mean, here are two companies that didn't exist 15 years ago, doing extraordinary things, spending a vast amount on technology. Facebook, one quick other announcement there.
I'm going to get this other one in.
Yeah. They've launched a new news app, Notify, in the United States. They're expanding yet again, trying to be a big force in news. All your notifications coming via Facebook rather than via anything else.
Let's talk about the big hacking case in the US. Four men have been charged.
This all dates back. Last year, we knew that JP Morgan, one of the great forces in world finance, had suffered a major hack, a big worry for it, obviously. This was on its sort of domestic customers. And now we've heard, and you always hear great colourful stories when the US authorities charge people. We've got this great long indictment outlining an extraordinary array of cyber criminality. Yeah, 4 people charged, 2 of them Israelis. They've done a pump and dump operation using stolen data to send emails to people to pump up the price of stocks and then sell them, an unlawful Bitcoin exchange, an illicit payment processing operation. Just a great, huge cybercrime enterprise. It just shows how this whole thing is developing.
Wow. Pump and dump. Yeah. Pump and dump. You don't want to pump and dump. No, Rory, great stuff. We appreciate your time. Thanks, Rory.
Thanks so much, Rory.
Have a great weekend, mate.
Great. Well, in just a moment, we'll be taking a look through the business pages of some of the papers out there. But first, a quick reminder of how to get in touch with us.
The Business Live page is where you can stay ahead with all the day's breaking business news. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest details, with insight and analysis from the BBC's team of editors right around the world. And we want to hear from you too. Get involved on the BBC Business Live webpage at bbc.com/business. On Twitter, we're at BBC Business, and you can find us on Facebook, BBC Business News. Business Live on TV and online, whenever you need to know.
OK, let's get straight back into the papers. You've got a quick tweet, because we want to talk about robots, right? Robots.
Yeah, the story in the Times warning that a huge number of our jobs, potentially 15 million, could be done by a robot. We asked our viewers, do they think that their job could be better done by a robot? And we've had a couple of replies. No, because a robot won't make a mistake. And without a mistake, we can't improve the process.
Can a robot do your job?
Well, I was very pleased. A few months ago, someone did one of these online where you typed your job into a box and it put you on the graph where you're under threat. And journalism, actually, for once, isn't under threat, and we are well down the curve.
We're pleased
to know. Good news, eh?
So there's some good news in the world. There's some good news.
But robots are coming into the more mainstream, aren't they, nowadays? Yeah.
Andy Haldane, who made this speech, he's the latest person to warn of this, and it is a massive
Chief economist
shift.
at the Bank of England.
Absolutely, sorry. And it is a massive shift, and we're talking about 15 million jobs is the figure today, but it's a societal shift, and also it increases the gap between the haves and the have-not, because what you expect to see is those jobs that aren't affected by robots will see their wages rise, but those that are will see wages driven down. So it increases that gap.
In about 30 seconds, Facebook and China,
Absolutely.
it really blocks more
in India.
content in India. I'm sorry, India.
Than anywhere else.
Key market for Facebook. Mark Zuckerberg was there last month. What I thought was really interesting in this story is that although Facebook blocks the most in India, they get the most requests in the US for information about their users.
Wow, there you go. See, a robot couldn't have done that, right? Because we're counting down on the clock here. We're counting down on the clock. And you actually finished, and we've still got a little bit of that time left. What do we do now? Richard, good stuff. Have a great weekend. We appreciate that indeed.
Yeah, you've been watching Business Live with Aaron and I. Thanks for being with us.
You got more business throughout the rest of the day.
I do indeed.
Ta-da. Have a great weekend.
See you soon. Bye.